This episode of The Feral Mammy is brought to you by Bumps and Banya, supporting you through pregnancy, birth and beyond with antenatal education, hypnobirthing, birth doula care, breastfeeding support and baby sensory classes across the northeast of Ireland, covering Louth, Monaghan, Cavan and Meath. Real preparation, real support, no fluff, just care that actually holds you. Hello, I'm Aoife Lennon, IBCLC, hypnobirthing instructor, birth doula and all-round birth and boob nerd. Today I am joined by Nicole O'Kelly. Nicole is mum to her 11-year-old daughter. She's a birth and postpartum doula, so a woman after my own heart, as well as being a pregnancy yoga teacher based in Roscommon, supporting families across the Midlands, the West and online. Nicole came into motherhood young without the kind of information and support that she now gives to other women, and that experience has shaped everything about how she works today. So throughout this conversation, we're going to get into what women are carrying into birth, possibly fear, guilt, the sense that perhaps somehow they've gotten it wrong, where that comes from. We'll talk around how birth is framed as something to be managed rather than experienced, and why so many women walk away feeling like they have failed when in reality they were never really given a fair chance. We will be talking about reclaiming ownership of your body, of your birth and your whole story. So if you have ever questioned yourself in any part of that, you're going to feel very seen in this one. Hello, Nicole. You're very welcome to the Feral Mammy podcast, and thank you for joining us today. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Aoife. And yeah, really love the name of the podcast. I was like, that's such a good one to say. Like, I'm on the Feral Mammy podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, if people, there are people out there who don't listen to it, believe it or not. But whenever everybody about it, they're like, I love the name. And I'm like, yeah, it's just like, it's just me to a T. Like kids would say that I'm pretty feral too. So, they get to be the feral kids. Story is just, it fascinates me. You became a mum at 19, yeah?
Yeah.
And
Feels like a lifetime ago.
perhaps, yeah, and perhaps, maybe didn't have access to that same information, or maybe not even access, but just didn't have that same information that you now help other women to find, to learn. So when you look back at yourself at 19, what did she deserve to know that nobody told her? What would you
Yeah,
really have? What does today's Nicole wish that 19-year-old Nicole knew when she became a mum?
yeah, that's such a good one because Ava's 11 now. So, like, it's so long ago, but so, like, very present because now I'm like supporting women and families like through these like huge life transitions. And at 19, it's interesting. Like, I know so much information now, and now I would make so much different choices. But 19-year-old Nicole probably wouldn't have maybe made different choices. I think that's like really a good thing, I suppose, to have that awareness of like, is like not judging what past you did, because like that Nicole, even if she had the information or the options that I know are available now, probably wouldn't have took them. And that's okay. I give her a bit of grace for that. But there is like so much that in the same sense that I wish she just knew was an option, even if she wouldn't have chose it. And when I think about this, like I go back to like that very beginning, like going into the GP appointment and saying, like, I'm pregnant. And the GP saying, okay, like, right, like, which hospital do you want to go to? And like that, being like one of the first questions. It's not like, here are your choices, like, this is the differences between each hospital. And this one has like whatever cesarean rates, this one has whatever induction rates, this one is this far away from you, and this one's 10 minutes further. Did you know home birth's also an option? Like, it wasn't presented like that. It was just like, which hospital do you want to go to? I'm from Tullamore, so I'm from Offaly, so right in the Midlands, and I would have had the choice between Portlaoise, Mullingar, and Portiuncula. Yeah, I was like I was born in Mullingar. Ava's dad was born in Portiuncula, and it was like which one do you go to? And he was like, oh, maybe go to the one that I was born in. And I was like, okay, it's 5 minutes further than Mullingar. Sure, yeah, why not? Like that was our decision making. Who was born in which hospital? It was not like an informed choice of like which hospital might be better suited. And yeah, there wasn't that full range of options like given to me. Like I had no clue about home birth as an option for birthing until a couple of years ago. Like I'd never heard or seen of anyone having a home birth. And as I said, I know most likely I would have never chosen that back then, but I do believe I should have known that that was an option.
Do you think age was a factor in that, that the doctor just assumed you wouldn't have had an interest in a home birth, so omitted, or do you think that they just don't?
I don't really think so. Like, I don't think it was age because, like, a lot of people that have access to home birth now don't know it's that they have access because they're not told about it. And like as we know, like access to home birth is very limited in Ireland at the moment, depending on where you're located. And because of like private midwives closure, there are still areas that have access to home birth through the HSE, and some people don't even know it's an option or don't know that it's a safe option for them. And they're just like, oh, I wouldn't do that, or not for my first pregnancy. You hear that a lot of the time as well. But it's definitely like something that you're not really given any information about. And I was like, I at least could have got a leaflet or something, even if I wouldn't read it, at least, I was told that option. And yeah, a lot of the stuff kind of comes back to just simply like knowing that there was different options there, or being given information of like how to choose which hospital, not which one you were born in. Okay, sure, I'll just go there. There's no information on like how to choose the right hospital if that's what you choose. And that is what I did, but it was just like it was nearly a toss of a coin.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
suppose, it can be, it doesn't have to be important, but it can be really important to know about the policies and the services available in different hospitals. And like there could be services for younger mothers, there could be services in terms of like the scanning. I know when I had my children, probably a bit like yourself, typically all that was offered was your 12-week scan, and then you might have gotten a placental scan towards the end of the pregnancy, but it wasn't commonplace to have an anomaly scan outside of the big three in Dublin.
I don't remember what, like, I know I did have scans, but I don't remember what scans. And I know I went for like a private one as well. But yeah, like, I don't even remember some of the stuff, but like that one, like, just from like now knowing like how important it can be, like, to know your options of where you're going to birth and making that decision like from an informed place. When you have, a couple of options, say of hospitals that are within like 5 or 10 minutes difference, well then you can make an informed choice of which hospital might be better for you. Whereas like of course if there's one hospital close and the other one's really far away, well maybe you're going to just choose the one closer. And I suppose when I look at birth then as well in regards to things that I wish I knew. I definitely wish I had that reassurance and like belief in myself. Like there was always this kind of fear around birth from what I would hear, and fear around the pain of birth. And it was always just like get all the medication. And I, went in there or went through pregnancy being like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get the epidural and I'll be grand. I was very much in that like go with the flow mentality. And I just did I think it was 2 hospital antenatal classes. And like that was my only birth prep, and just being like, yeah, sure, I'll just take all the drugs and, I'll be grand, I'll get through it. And it's just this thing that you really have to get through. But when I got to the hospital, and now I'm very much aware like how many centimeters dilated are does not say how close you are to giving birth, or it's just one piece of information. But like when I got to the hospital, they told me I was 8 centimeters dilated. I was definitely like, I know myself now looking back, I was very near birthing Ava. And I feel like I had done so much at home before I got to the hospital that if I had somebody that like reassured me in myself rather than saying like, if you want the epidural, you have to get it now. because if you go any further, you won't be able to get it, rather than how it was presented to me. It was
Yeah.
just like, you have to get it now or you're not going to be able to get it. And of course I was like, get me that epidural now. And even though I was really struggling, managing the pain, like I had no clue about like comfort measures or like supportive like tools or techniques, like absolutely nothing. Like, and yeah, I think that reassurance of somebody saying to me, like asking, of course, did I want epidural, but also like that reassurance of being like, oh, like, look how far you've
You're
come, you're
almost
doing
there.
amazing. Like that would have made like such a difference to have somebody that like believed in me and believed like, you've come this far, you could keep going. Just that like reassurance and belief of like, I have been had a completely healthy pregnancy, I've been laboring by myself without any comfort measures, anything, just getting through it really.
Amazing.
That support would have made such a difference, to have somebody that just was like, wow, like, look what you've done, like you can keep going, rather than that kind of fear-led
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. It's funny, like so many first time parents dread the idea, like they cannot entertain the idea of giving their child Calpol for like teething pain or Nurofen for teething pain. Again, throwing no shade at anyone who
Yeah.
uses it or doesn't use it. I think, parenthood is very much about survival and you do what you have to survive it.
Hmm.
And similarly, no shade to anyone who had epidurals either. But for a lot of these parents have also had epidurals. This idea of like, I need this to cope with the pain of giving birth, when giving birth is just as natural as cutting a tooth. Like you say, using fear to drive on the idea of, oh, well, you have to get an epidural now. And like at 7 or 8 centimeters, your body's at that point transitioning. You could be 2 contractions away from being fully dilated. And you just think any midwife worth their salt would have known she's transitioning at the moment. She's really close to giving birth. Why would you kind of, and again, I don't know if encourage is the right word, but like almost kind of like it almost give you an ultimatum. If you want this, you have to get it now, knowing that it's going to slow down that birth or likely going to slow down that birth.
Yeah, like when there's that like reassurance that like I feel looking back, like having somebody that was able to reassure me, who went in there with fear of pain and went in there not like, I suppose, thinking that like I wouldn't be able to do it without medication because it is going to be so hard and so painful. And like, yes, I was in pain, and I wanted something to take that away, but I also wanted somebody like to give me reassurance, because like I was 19, I didn't like hadn't given birth before, like I had limited education. Also, Ava's dad was the same, like he was also the same age, like hadn't experienced this before. And like he wasn't able to reassure me in any of it, because neither of us knew what was normal and what was right and how to navigate it. And so having somebody who was experienced with birth, as the midwives in the hospital are, to be able to just like reassure, like, of how like, "Hey, you're doing this and this is all normal, and here are some things to support you," rather than just like, do you want this now or you won't get it? Or like that, yeah, that ultimatum kind of led question, rather than leading with reassurance and then saying like, oh, do you want the epidural? And here's what will happen if you have the epidural. Here's like your benefits, risks, like giving me the actual like information um, around it, because like I didn't know that would slow things down. Having the epidural, having come so far, I didn't realize having an epidural would most likely slow things down and obviously go against some of what was naturally physiologically happening in my body beforehand, and also the chance of the interventions leading, which
Yeah, I think it's so important as well as women to learn to forgive ourselves for all of these things that happen to us when we don't know. For women who go into the hospital to have a baby, they are going in and they place their trust in obstetricians, midwives, and for the most part, in particular, midwives they are absolute angels. Like I know some of them. My own mom is a midwife, and I know that they are so women centered. But unfortunately, the system maybe doesn't put the woman at the center of care. And dare I say it, sometimes it puts things like litigation and policy, and we forget that there are actually people involved in this. Policy doesn't keep up with evidence. And then, you're seen as kind of going rogue almost to want to birth outside of that system. But really, I think I'm making 2 points here, but the first is that women need to be able to forgive themselves for the choices that they've made with the information that they've had, because they made the best decision that they were able to with the information that they've been given at that time. But the second point is that the system doesn't really allow for you to do that, particularly on your first birth. I think a lot of women become a little bit more vocal, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here about it all either, because birth for so many women is life changing in the most wonderful way. So tell me, Nicole, you're doing a lot of pregnancy yoga and things like that. So you're meeting women in this period of vulnerability. Is there any type of kind of mindset work that you do around birth or motherhood that you think can make a positive change for women in navigating this system?
Yeah, I think it's really like not forgetting yourself in the experience, because it's all this like build up to the birth, this like moment really, like when you think about it, yes, it's a milestone, yes, it's something you're going to remember for the rest of your life. It's this like huge like rite of passage, this life transition of you, this version of you before, and this like transition into mother or mother again if it's, multiple birth on. But like the journey up to that point often gets like dismissed or bottled down to just appointments and ticking the boxes and like tests and all of these sort of things that you just have to like move through. But like, where is your experience amongst that? And I think that like it's like a preparation phase up to this moment you're building up to. It's like if you refer to exercise, it's like the prep work before the race or the prep work before the fight or whatever it is. And it's like that journey to that place that can make a huge difference on your experience. And like how I suppose I shared with my experience of like I went in with fear. I went in with limited like information or education. Like I didn't know a comfort measure at all. Like I didn't have much information really. And my journey definitely wasn't one that was honored. And I suppose it's that remembering to give your journey that space and to be valid and be yours, and actually like that time to reflect on your like fears and your beliefs around work, rather than later like looking back and like past reflection and being like, what I'm sharing there now, like I can look back and see I entered from fear, but I didn't really know that back then. And it's one of the things definitely with like my online birth prep program and my doula clients and everything, that I'm like creating that space as well to like actually look at your beliefs around birth and where they've come from. And did you pick it up from watching Rachel and Friends give birth, or did you pick it up from like a story that your mother, your auntie told you, or just something that's generationally living in you and mightn't even be a story that you've heard? And also like there's the wider society impact on how we look at birth today. But like that's huge, rather than just rolling with it and moving through the pregnancy and like not giving that the space, because the fears do creep up in birth and they will creep up in birth, and like that's okay. But when you give it like time and like space to look at your fears and look at your beliefs during pregnancy, you're already acknowledging them. You're already giving them the space to be there, and you can look at them and see if they're actually yours, or if they're actually even relevant to you, or are they like completely like nonsense. Or maybe they're really to be looked at when you get to birth, and like if that fear naturally creeps up, you're like, okay, I've already met this fear. It's not something that you've like buried like deep, deep down and be like, no, I'm just gonna like not think about that because that's not what I want to happen. And then it like creeps up really loudly when you're in that experience. I don't know if that really answered your question. I feel like I
Yeah,
went on a
no, it
tangent
does.
there, but maybe it did.
Centering the woman in birth, like that's like a core principle, I think, of motherhood, and of motherhood in general, not just the birth thing, But that idea of, oh, just make sure my baby is okay. And it's like, this is 2026. If you're having a baby in a hospital, you and your baby making it out alive is the bare minimum that you should
Hmm.
expect. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes babies are unwell. Sometimes interventions are so important and life saving. But you'll know this from your birth doula clients, as well as I suppose probably a lot of other clients, that interventions are often used, and sometimes people are like, oh my god, just make sure my baby's okay. And it's like, what you're actually being saved from is the situation that has been created by the interventions, rather than it being a naturally occurring kind of organic incident where a baby um is unwell. Like, I always think back to my first birth, and when I was pregnant with Kieran, I was told, oh, he's going to be a big baby, but nobody was talking cesarean birth or anything like that, and I was terrified. And I, like, would say, hand on heart, terrified of giving birth. And I actually think I probably talked myself out of birth so much. So I got to 41 plus 4, and I was booked in for an induction, and he was born at 41 plus 6, but not without like the full suite of induction, two propays, artificial rupture of membranes, then oxytocin drip, epidural, and you just think to yourself, and like the shit show didn't end there. There was then an issue of, funny, I only had this conversation with someone the other day about this idea of being allowed to labor down for an hour when you've had an epidural, so that when you're 10 centimeters dilated, that they will give you 60 minutes to allow the baby to descend through the birth canal, which, is to, ideally kind of prevent over kind of straining the pelvic floor, things like that. But the reason they don't let you go beyond 60 minutes is because they say that it would cause too much pressure on the pelvic floor. But the reality is that that purple pushing, that chin to chest pushing, causes far more damage to your pelvic floor. And if we just waited and allowed, like, even in the scenario where I had my induced birth, got to 10 centimeters with my epidural, if I had been allowed to labor down just until my baby's head was pretty much poking out, the reality is there probably wouldn't have been a shoulder dystocia. And I don't know beyond that, because then we had like massive postpartum hemorrhage and a retained placenta. So, like, it was a shit show start to finish regardless. And I don't know why I started telling this story. Something to do with,
What you're allowed to do.
yeah, this idea of being allowed to do something, like, but it just not making sense. And yet that's what I'm, sorry, I do know what it is, but it was like, oh well, we saved you. We saved your baby, got stuck. Weren't you just so lucky to have been in a hospital, to have been induced when you were? Because if he'd been any bigger, he could have been just really, really stuck. And I'm like, that wasn't a failure on my part. That was a failure on your part to wait for him to descend and make all of the turns that he needed to make to be in the right position to navigate the pelvis. Okay, and I can't say that for sure because, we don't have a crystal ball or that, but it's so much of how we're
No,
preparing women.
you don't have a crystal ball, but you have your instinct as a
Yeah,
mother, and you have your capacity of like your ability to self-reflect and like look back on your experience. And like it sounds very much from you sharing that, like you know in your bones that that was not how your birth would have gone. So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know in yourself. And like
yeah,
that's like, that's enough that you know in yourself that things could have been different with the information that you know. And you're just like that ability within yourself, that instinct to know, I think that's enough. It doesn't need to be fact that this wouldn't have happened. Because, of course, like we can never know exactly, but it's
yeah,
that like instinct, like that gets forgotten, that like mother instincts, like that you know your body best, like you know best. But sometimes just like the fear and the information that's there and like the pressure and everything can like cloud over that. But like you are the expert in yourself. Like you know yourself best. You know your baby best. Like everyone else might be experts in their own way and their different, professions and fields and qualifications, but like nobody knows better than the person that's pregnant,
No,
like them and their baby.
100%. Because, and I can remember thinking afterwards, I was like, because I also struggled then with breastfeeding. And I remember saying it to my doctor when I went in. I said, I feel like such a failure. I feel like this is all my fault, that I've messed it up. I couldn't go into labor. I couldn't birth my baby, and now I can't feed them fully. And she was like, that's not for you to hold. She was like, none of these things are your fault. And I was like, and at that time when you are trying to navigate those massive emotions, as well as the massive brain shift, the massive personality shift, everything shift that occurs with having a baby, and it's very hard not to feel like, well, I'm evidently the person here who's messing up, because you're the constant in it. But it's not. Like, this is why I was saying about the forgiveness earlier. Women are very rarely in life allowed to forgive themselves. And I think that's why we carry so much guilt, because we wouldn't carry that guilt if we genuinely forgave ourselves for any of those decisions that we've made, whether that be to have a home birth, to not have a home birth, to have an epidural, to breastfeed, to not breastfeed. So, we really just need to say to women, it's not your fault. It's really not your fault. It's the fault of a much bigger thing. And like, I keep calling it the system. Like, it's not even just, the system. It's a full cultural thing. Like you were saying there about Rachel from Friends, and I'm like, yeah. And we curate our own news feeds and all of that on Instagram and Facebook and everything. So I think a lot of what we see mirrors how we think and how we feel. So if you're already thinking, kind of birth is scary, you're going to have things that mirror that for you and kind of reinforce that through common culture. And it is like, I remember my earliest memory of a birth was, I think her name is Kirstie Alley. Her water's going in Look Who's Talking. So
Okay.
you're too young to even remember this film, Nicole. Okay.
I know what the film is, but like I don't remember the moment.
Yeah. So her waters go, she's out shopping, and it's this big whoosh. And I
Yeah.
think, like, I'm now like, right, that does happen for some women. But it's
Yeah.
really, like, for most women, it's really not this monumental cascade of water. You know,
Yeah.
for most women, it's,
Mhm.
a little
And it
trickle
can
or a,
be, but it's not at that like beginning stage.
yes,
Like a lot of the times it's like actually like pretty close to just before baby comes that
yeah,
there's this like big like
yeah,
cinematic like gush.
gush.
And it's not like, yeah, when you have absolutely no clue and you're out like doing the shopping or wherever it is. It's like at another point when your body's left to just do as it does because like that's there as cushioning for baby's head, against
Exactly.
all like the bony parts of the pelvis and it has reason to be there. And yeah, sometimes it does break earlier in labor and sometimes it does break, earlier than a term in pregnancy, but yeah, like what we see, as you said there in movies, like that's like in every movie and TV show, that's how it starts, is this big gush and everybody
And then
swoops in.
contractions, like, not to 60, like, no contractions. And then they're having these earth
Yeah.
shattering, and you're like, that's
Everybody piles into the taxi and like runs to
just
the
about make it to the
hospital. And she's like
hospital.
screeched in the wheelchair into the room. And then all of a sudden she's on her back screaming and pop comes baby. And it just happens like that. But usually it's not like,
Yeah.
it's not that
It was actually
dramatic and doesn't happen in 10 minutes.
my biggest disappointment with that movie. It Ends With Us. There, was it last year or the year before it came out? Was that Blake Lively was on her, and I was like, you had a chance. You had a
Mm,
chance to show. I was like, and again, like,
yeah.
it's 2026.
Yeah. There's options to show different. variations of what birth can look like. And yeah, I do feel that as well when I watch stuff now and I'm like, this is new. Like you could have done something else, or like particular like the people that are like want like a pain medication free birth or want a doula, like, and if it's in a movie or something, it's like they might show something like that and you're like, oh great, and then it's like portrayed to be this like super like hippie person, and like it's very like airy fairy, and like yeah, the sage is out and everything, and it's like, right, sure, some people are like that, but like not everybody that wants like no pain medication or wants a doula is like, waving sage around every 2 seconds. And it's not that. It's like when there's those moments in movies and TV shows where they like start to bring it in, it's usually nearly in like a piss take sort of way rather than a like a serious way.
Yeah. It's like, she's there crocheting in the corner with the sage. Like, yeah, I get it. And I'm like, no, that's really not what a doula does. It would be
Yeah.
great
Well,
to sit
I
down and
do
have.
sit in the corner sometimes and I like,
Do you like a bit of
sit back,
crochet?
and I haven't got there yet now. I've like contemplated bringing my knitting with me sometimes, but I'm not at a stage that I think I'm good enough at knitting to bring it with me to a birth.
Okay, okay, yeah.
But
That's
I
fair
do
enough.
love that idea you hear of like how like the midwife would have sat back in the corner and been knitting or crocheting, and that like she has that point of focus that she's not sitting there observing you, but very much in the space, holding the room and holding the environment and keeping an eye without being like on top of the person while they're laboring. Like I love that yeah, that idea of like it's that holding the space, but without being like, yeah, having to be like super involved all
Yeah.
the time when it's not needed. So yeah, I'm like, if somebody wants to sit back and knit or crochet and it's going to stop them giving interventions that are unneeded, like go for it.
Now I did hear that, and I haven't watched it yet because I had was reading the book when it came out. Hamnet, that the birth in Hamnet was amazing, but the baby just didn't have a placenta.
Oh, I
But
haven't watched that one yet.
yeah, but
There's
by all
always
accounts, the
something.
birth in it is very, very real. Yeah.
Just
So there you
missing
go.
a placenta.
But for anyone who's listening and wants to see what birth actually looks like, I really, really suggest following Badass Mother Birther. Is that it? Is that
Yeah,
her? Yeah.
yeah. Such a
Now,
great account.
it can be a little bit, maybe scary is not the right word. It's very
It's
real. It's
real,
very raw.
raw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's magical. It's magical
It
seeing
gives
women
you
in their power birthing. Like there's actually nothing like it.
Yeah, it gives you the view of different, and they're not all the same. It's not
No.
all like twinkly, sparkly, like fairy lights and
Yeah.
like magical, like,
Yeah.
because that's what some people like assume, like, when you want like limited interventions, they're like, there's an array of different types of births and in different places and different support systems around. And like, yeah, it's real and raw, but like that's what birth is, and having that
Yeah. She
familiarity with like
actually
how
had
it can look is really powerful.
she put up one the other day of a cesarean birth where they had dropped the drapes and the baby was able to. I think they're the most amazing cesarean births where the baby is allowed to emerge, kind of at their own pace because, for whatever reason, a cesarean birth was chosen or was deemed necessary, but, the baby wasn't going to be compromised by being allowed to come out in their own time. And it was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Until you've been at a birth or you've been through birth, I don't think you can realize just how beautiful it is because it is. It's chaotic and it's messy and it's everything else as well, but it is beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I suppose to finish up, Nicole, and I know that like so much of our conversation is kind of like, kind of turned back on itself and interwoven itself into a big ball of wool. But for a woman who's there and she is sitting at home and afraid of getting birth wrong, or a woman who is sitting at home having given birth and feels like they've messed up, what would you say to her today?
Yeah, so I'll lead with the like somebody that's postpartum now, because it's kind of what
Yeah,
we were speaking about a little bit before. And it's like you did the best with the information that you could at the time, especially if you're looking back and being like, oh, I wish I knew this or I wish I knew that. Like you did the best you could with the information you had at the time and the support that you had at the time. I think that's a big one as well, the support that was there for you and how you were supported in that. And like you were like very much like enough in what you were doing right now. Like the biggest thing I would say is, yeah, just that remember that like you're doing enough and like there's no matter how you gave birth, like your body has gone through so much and you are still going through so much. Like you're in this like huge transition. Like you've had this nearly like death and rebirth of yourself and you're learning yourself as a mother or a mother again and you're learning about your baby or this new, being here that you've not like met on the outside world before and you're both very much like building this relationship with each other. Like you're both nearly babies in a sense, to that like it's fresh, real, and you're getting to know each other and you're both doing your best in that. So definitely like giving yourself some grace, like coming back to acknowledging like the little wins. I talk about that a lot in like the mom and baby yoga class. Like at the beginning we always like acknowledge the wins, however big or small they are. It could be just that you drank a hot cup of tea or that like, it like something simple like your baby didn't spew up everything after they fed today or like whatever it is, just like acknowledge the little bits
Yeah.
that are wins and also acknowledging the hard stuff too, like not belittling the hard stuff, like and being like, yeah, this is damn hard right now. It doesn't have to be all grateful and yeah, we're doing great. Like you're allowed to say this is a bit shit right now, yeah, and ask for support, in whatever way that is. And that can be really, really hard, especially in the society that we live in and the like how we grew up, it's like to be like a strong, independent woman and like not ask for help and I should be able to do this. But like, no, like you should be able to do this with a support system around you. And that's what it would have used to have been. People would have had like a really big community around them and it would have been that kind of a village mentality of support. But now, like most people don't live beside family anymore, or you might be, living like hours away from where you came from or a completely different country. And you might not even know who your next door neighbor is, and you could be living beside them for a couple of years, and you don't have a relationship or that ability to ask for help. So yeah, really like lean in to try to find the supports around you, like reach out to your local mom and baby group or your local breastfeeding group or doula or whatever it is and like try find that. And I know that's easier said than done, like telling you to reach out. People should be coming to you, but
Yeah.
it's not always the case, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Nicole, thank you so much for all of this today. I have to say, I've genuinely thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you. Would you let our listeners know where they can find you on social media, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to chat. I feel like we could definitely keep going to do
Definitely.
part two. So you can find me on Instagram at Nicole O'Kelly Yoga. My website is just nicoleokelly.com. And yeah, I provide birth and postpartum support in the Midlands and Connacht of Ireland and online support as well. And there's yoga classes in Roscommon and Longford. And I also run an amazing a program called The Snug, and that is online, and that's the online virtual birth preparation. But we go into like more than just like the information prep. We also look at I suppose, the mindset, the honoring the journey piece that we actually spoke about here today. Is a big part of that and that community support as well. And so yeah, please reach out and let me know if there's anything in particular that you took from this or if you want to talk about it. I'm always happy to have the chats in the Instagram DMs.
So, mamas and mamas to be, if you took anything from today's episode, let it be this: you were never the problem and you were never at fault. As both myself and Nicole have said, you made the best decisions you could at the time with the information and support that you had. And that really does matter. Nicole's work is a lot about giving women that information, that support, that steady presence to move through pregnancy, birth, just feeling
Mhm.
more confident, more in control. I will tag all of your details in the show notes, Nicole, as well. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody else who might need to hear it. these conversations can sometimes be a little bit stingy as well. So, give yourself space, reach out to someone if you need to. And as I said, this is the last episode of this season 1. I cannot believe I've recorded 10 full episodes. So I will see you all for season 2. Only going to take a little break, but I'm not going to commit to exactly when I'll be back. But I will chat to you all very, very soon. And in the meantime, don't forget to be your absolutely fieriest and most feral selves.